filmed on a shoestring budget somewhere in the bowels of Richmond. It's time for Let's Get Drunk and Talk About It with your host, Nate Peterson.
Hello. It's certainly been an interesting few weeks here in Richmond. Thankfully, Morrissey didn't get elected as mayor. Not so thankfully, Donald Trump was elected president. Isn't it interesting how Democratic candidates tend to get elected democratically and Republican candidates tend to get elected republicly? The complications of a Trump presidency are widespread, but let's talk about a big issue that a lot of the media has been ignoring: how Obama has paved the way for Trump to be a dictator. Back in 2011, Anwar al-Awlaki, an American citizen, was killed by a drone strike. He was killed without trial because capturing him was infeasible, and he posed a, quote, imminent threat. This was and still is controversial, but at the same time, the Obama administration was able to feed us enough bullshit about national defense for us to think this was okay. And this power is now in the hands of Donald Trump, a man whose campaign aides have said keeps lists of those who have wronged him. See how this is a problem? And now, to the people who elected this con man to the executive branch, the white working class, and particularly the evangelicals who believe Islam is so widespread that we are at risk of being ruled by Sharia law. First of all, that's fucking stupid. Second, I find it extremely ironic that a party so worried about being ruled by religious law does not see how that has already happened. We currently live under a government populated by radical Christians seeking to establish their religion as the law of the land. Life begins at conception is a Christian belief. Liquor stores should be closed on Sundays is a Christian belief. No blowjobs and butt stuff is a Christian belief. But somehow, these wackos have been able to sneak their belief system into the laws of this country. Ted Cruz famously once said that he is a Christian first and an American second. Can you imagine the political fuckstorm that would have happened if Keith Ellison said he's a Muslim first and an American second? For some reason, religious conservatives are unable to notice this blatant hypocrisy. With Trump's election, there's been a call from various organizations that we need to listen to the disaffected rural population of this country in order to come together. But there's only so much that listening can do when they say things like, abortion is the Holocaust, and Michelle Obama has ape arms. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know a lot of people who compared the First Lady of the United States to a primate who have since changed and are now well-educated, intelligent, and productive members of society. All right, let's get the show started. That's my spiel for this week. Few topics we're going to go over. Obviously, the local election happened. But before we do that, let's have some shots. Today's promoted liquor is Pinnacle Atomic Hot. Tastes just like Fireball, but it's cheaper and it's clear.
Oh boy.
Is anybody going to do more than one?
Not right away.
Thank you.
All right.
So, let's get drunk and talk about it.
Let's.
All right. Woo! So, my name's Nate. This is David Paula. Who do you wish to be identified by your title? Or would you like to go simply as David Paula?
David Paul's good.
Okay, cool. This is David Paula, local political interest man. This is Jimmy Lee Jarvis, former staffer for the Jack Berry for Mayor campaign. And this is Harry Garnett, who also worked for Jack Berry.
Former staffer, yes.
Excellent, and has worked on various other Democratic campaigns.
In Orange County, Virginia.
In Orange County, Virginia. Excellent. Okay.
Did you almost call me Jimmy Lee Vaughn?
Jimmy Lee Vaughn?
Yeah.
Not Jarvis?
No, it sounded like you almost called me.
Oh.
That's
Why would
Stevie
I-
Ray Vaughan's little brother.
Oh.
nice.
True story.
Well, I just meant to call you Jimmy Lee Jarvis, but
Well, good. You'd better.
excellent. Good. So let's start with the first topic. There was a lot of hubbub on Election Day about fake ballots being passed around by every campaign.
Not every
Although not Barry's. Not Barry's, I'll give him credit. Stoney put out the real ballot, which is his, since he was a Democratic nominee for mayor. And then there was another committee started by J.J. Minor, who kind of rebelled against the Richmond, the local Democratic committee, and they endorsed their own set of candidates,
Which he is the head of.
Yes. which were often in direct contrast to the ones that the committee they were already in, which was the Democratic committee, had endorsed. So that included like Ellen Robertson they endorsed over Don Moss, even though Don Moss had already received that nomination. Then we also had the issue of Morrissey staffers going out claiming that Jack Barry was a Republican, putting things like, "Oh, I'm from the Tea Party," and acting like a Tea Partier, but actually just being a Morrissey clone, and going out and handing out ballots saying, "Hey, while you're voting Trump for president, make sure you vote Jack Barry for mayor," trying to give the impression that Barry was a Republican, which is a rumor and not proven at this point. So let's talk about that. Obviously, I'm sure you're pretty pissed off about the misleading that was going on during Election Day.
Well, I think, I'm not happy about it, but, I might be surprised I don't have that much, bad feelings about it, honestly. Politics
You're not bitter?
No, I'm not. Politics is politics, and things get rough, and I'm really proud that we ran, I think, a really positive, truthful campaign.
Yeah.
I wish other candidates had done the same, but I don't know that is, tip the scales. I think it was wrong and obviously untrue. Jack's a lifelong Democrat, and I think he was really dumbfounded that anyone would think otherwise. But I don't know. I don't know that it really tipped things, but it just goes to show the kind of guy that Joe Morrissey is and the kind of campaign he was running.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's a bit of a slime ball.
And my favorite,
I've heard that.
my favorite thing about Joe Morrissey's fake ballots was that he had a little box and a check mark next to Hillary Clinton, a little box and a check mark next to Tim Kaine, and then a little box and a check mark for Joe Morrissey for mayor. You don't even select Tim Kaine. You don't select the vice presidential candidate.
I think he had Don McEachin on there too, and that called McEachin to go and disavow any association with Joe's candidacy.
Did anybody have? I mean, was there a poll to? I mean, is there going to be legal action for that, or just kind of everyone's kind of
Well, there was minor legal action from the Democratic Party at the very beginning of the election.
Because they was talking about a lawsuit possibly because he was handing out these ballots.
Yeah, I can't speak to any of that. It's not really my department. I'll say this: I think that I don't believe that it really could have tipped the election. Because I don't think that voters are that dumb. I think that it says something about Joe Morrissey that he thinks that.
Jimmy, you just said voters aren't dumb, and we just elected Donald Trump as president.
Yeah, a minority of voters elected Donald Trump as president. How about this?
Minority.
I don't think that Richmond voters are dumb.
Okay, good.
Virginia did its duty.
Yeah, Virginia did its duty, and Richmond did double duty. In attempting to stop Trump. But I think it says something about Joe that he thinks so low of what he views as his constituents that he would, tell such a blatant lie. And I think people saw through it. I mean, we had a campaign office in the 7th District, the only campaign that did. We did a lot of outreach to those communities. Obviously, maybe we could have done more, and, we didn't win. So obviously.
Did that go to Stoney or did that go to Morrissey?
The 7th District went to Stoney.
Okay.
And where's the 7th District?
That's Churchill. Churchill area. Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay.
So I think it says something about how Joe views the people that he claims to represent, and but I don't think it's accurate about an accurate representation of East End voters, or if, the way that he talks about it is African American voters. I don't think that they are homogenous, and I think one of the big problems with this election was the way that the media and the candidates. I think our candidate is an exception, obviously, but many of the candidates kind of treated, Joe Morrissey's voters like this lost cause and these people who didn't know any better and were ignorant, and that just wasn't reflected in what I experienced when I was knocking door. I talked to, literally thousands of voters in the city, and a lot of them were voting for Joe Morrissey, and I didn't find that they were ignorant. I didn't find that they were, doing it because they were fooled. I think that they had some legitimate reasons, and I think a lot of them were open to new information and open to persuasion.
And what I'd like to say is I think it would be really great if we had some of those voices on, especially mediums like this, right, that are more accessible.
Oh, I invite them. I mean, trust me, I invited people who were handing out the ballots. I got their names and I sent them invitations.
Let me try to do more
because I would love to have some people.
Let's do some more outreach, because 3 white dudes
Yeah.
talking about this issue.
For,
Feels a
for
little uncomfortable.
disclosure, I originally
No, I'm not.
had,
I'm sorry. I'm
I know,
not
I
attacking
tried
you.
to
I'm
have
just
a
saying.
black woman on here. She was going to come on.
I'm
and
the
she didn't
alternate,
come.
folks.
Yeah.
This
Okay.
was not intended to be a whitewash cast.
Yeah.
There was an invitation and it was rejected.
We'll make
Yeah.
it happen.
The last minute.
We'll make it happen next time.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I just really it makes me sad that there's this perception of who Joe's supporters are, and it's a perception that's shared by the media, I think, in Richmond. If you read
And a lot of people.
and
I mean,
if you don't
citizens.
live in that community, I think a lot of people view those constituencies as being less than and being ignorant, and I just didn't find that to be the case. And
What do you think it was at the end that finally stuck? What argument that you and LeVar made to start battling over a lot of those districts that were supposed to be definite Joe, city council districts? What did you guys do? What do you think finally? Like, you guys were out on the doors, right? You talked to a lot of people. You're involved in a lot of communication. What do you think?
Well, it's also, if Richard had been here, he would tell us when he was invited and he was supposed to be here, but he didn't come. Not bitter.
So bitter.
Not bitter. But if he'd been here, he would have said that polling in small districts is unreliable. And
And that it was just wrong the whole time.
it was wrong. I mean, he predicted it. He predicted it, and he wrote an article, I think it was Election Day, and said the three outcomes were like, Morrissey and whatever runoff, or Morrissey wins outright, or and the one that he said is the most likely, which is going to surprise everybody, is that Stoney and Barry are probably going to be in a runoff or win outright. And that happened. And,
Yeah.
yeah,
But that's
Sharp
because
dude.
the polling was wrong.
Who is this?
It was Richard Mayer. He runs RVA poll.
RVA,
He's a
okay.
political science professor at.
Oh,
Cornell.
yeah. We talked
Yeah.
about that earlier.
Yeah, I think I like Richard a lot, and I really respect his writing and his thoughts. But I think that he's part of that group that really kind of overestimated Morrissey from the beginning. I mean, like you said, the first two, I think he said the two most likely circumstances for a long time was either Morrissey wins outright or it's a runoff with Joe, and that just didn't happen.
Well, he actually said the most likely was actually Stoney or Barry.
On election day after
Yeah,
the
right.
last scandal, I think that's what I think a lot of people thought that's what was going to happen on election day. But
Yeah.
I think that LeVar, to his credit, and Jack, to his credit, both made a really concerted effort at engaging communities that people were telling them you don't have a shot in, and getting out there and going to the RRHA, Tenants Council, stuff like that. I know Jack was really heavily involved in that. I assume LeVar was as well.
Yeah.
There was a lot of just genuine outreach, and it wasn't necessarily a message putting out there. It was like, hey, what do you guys want in a mayor? Like, what are y'all looking for in the city's next leadership? And that was really exciting to people because I think they were really used to being talked to and not talked with. I also think that Joe sabotaged himself. I mean, that whole last scandal with his client and pressuring her to do this, that, and the other.
I think that's what.
I
crippled
think
him in
I
his
think
last
that
2
was
weeks.
like the final straw.
You think
yeah.
that was it?
Well,
You
the
think
thing
that's
that
what turned
thing
around?
that was kind of weird for me, I'm getting into some really controversial territory. I might just edit this out. But there's basically there's
In that case, can I just get some liquor then? If you're gonna just edit all this out.
yeah. Well, let's transition.
Yeah,
Actually, let's
sure.
do a different topic.
Sorry. Yeah.
Let's
Wait.
just-
No.
I actually-
Can we hear the crazy stuff that you were gonna say?
Oh man. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
well,
what crazy stuff
All
is
right.
Nate gonna say?
So here's, and this is just something that I have kind of witnessed. There seems to be kind of a warped morality sense. And it could just be I'm judging my progressive values against a group of people who hasn't had as much advancement. But
Oh God.
yep, I'm going there. Like I said, I might just cut this out. But
We might just. I'm
I
sorry.
probably
go.
will. But like things that would normally be disqualifiers for us as as white voters, like the sex scandal, like his numerous infidelities, like punching people, like getting his law license revoked. Like for me, those things are just kind of like I would never do that. But you have a lot of these people in the African American community who said that he did the right thing by marrying this victim of statutory rape. And that was not an uncommon comment. That was something that a lot of them said. He did the right thing by marrying her, which I think is completely fucked up. And I don't think a lot of liberal feminists would disagree with that. So tell me if that's just something if that's systemic of that community, or I don't
So
know.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry. You go. You talk to Lisa.
Well, I will say this, there was an argument amongst the community, and I completely understand it. Is someone like Joe, who was always coming to their homes and making himself known and making himself to be a friend of the community, it became sort of like this idea that, and it supported his whole argument of who he was, that this was just the establishment making up stuff about him. Like there became sort of like, because I talked to a lot of people in these communities, and they genuinely believe that like this was the establishment, going against Joe, and they're just making up these stories about him to defeat old Uncle Joe.
It's like the Trump effect, kind of, to a
in a
certain
way.
degree.
In a way. And I mean, it's obviously was untrue, but
So you think that a lot of that, but I mean, the comment though that it's okay because he married her, that's kind of where I'm kind of like, that's, you and I have different morality systems. If you think it's okay, like that absolves you of the sin
Trust me,
of statutory
it was
raping
wrong.
someone.
So-
It's like he
But
needs-
some
he
people
needs
thought
to be
that
in
was
jail.
right,
So-
and these
so-
are, I mean, a lot of these were older African Americans who were being interviewed, but that seemed to be like a thing, like that was their mind, that was a solution, was you marry someone who you statutory raped.
Can I just take a couple of steps back and like work my way forward on,
Sure.
on Joe Morrissey? I know we've
Okay.
done this a bunch of times.
Okay.
But he was Commonwealth's attorney, and he had incredible ads on TV while he was a lawyer before that. His name recognition, he has been putting his name out in the community, and honestly, like, he helped rebuild a lot of the civic organizations in this city way back when. I know people don't really want to deal with that, but like he is a political institution in this city, right? He did a lot of awful, terrible things, but you also couldn't beat him because of his name recognition, I believe, and because of the constituent services that he put in. I don't mean to forgive anything of who he is as a person, but you have to put yourself in the shoes of these people, right? So the thing that I have issue with is the memory loss of the fact that he was, this prosecutor putting people away. Obviously got disbarred, left the country, came back, ran for House of Delegates, and won. But once he was a delegate and shifted to being a defense attorney, once he was reinstated, he had this way of charming the people. And everyone in Richmond knows that if you catch a bad charge and you need to get off, it might cost you a little bit of money, but Joe's gonna make it happen for you because he has
Especially if
the
you touch his
connection.
dick.
Yeah.
Especially if but
I was
But-
gonna say
but
it
you
might
know-
cost more than a little bit of money.
and
Might
I-
not just cost money, maybe it's much.
And I think that's why what you said earlier was important, right? They found out that like, yeah, fighting Joe. Oh wait, like yeah, he's been fighting for us, but like he's also been, literally taking advantage and figuratively taking
Yeah.
advantage of the
I mean,
community.
I don't
that's
wanna-
the worst kind of predator, the one that he's knew that too. He's the kind that has power, and he's going to use it on these communities that are disadvantaged. That
Yeah.
was his whole thing.
I agree with all these, damnations of Joe Morrissey, obviously, but I just want to push back. I don't think that it's a race thing. I don't think that it's obviously white voters don't have a problem with some of these things because look at who won the presidential election.
That's a good point.
And number two, Joe Morrissey lost by a lot. He was a
Yeah.
distant third place. So Richmond voters rejected him, even in those districts that were supposed to be his strongholds. They either went for Jack or they went for LeVar. I don't buy this whole like panic, like, oh my God, why are so many people supporting Joe Morrissey? I understand the impulse, but it just didn't bear out at the polls.
So
Yeah.
I guess like the reason why it hits so close to home for me is because I've knocked on doors against Joe Morrissey when he ran for special election after the lawsuit. He gave up his seat as a Democrat and then reannounced as an independent and ran in the special
As
election.
a write-in from
And-
jail.
Yeah,
And won.
and won and went to the the General Assembly on work release, which
Yeah.
is absurd. But I remember talking to the people in the community and them just really believing in him and the work in the constituent services and literally just coming out to their houses and helping them out with everyday problems, and that meant a lot to those people. So I thought that, and after getting whooped in that election, I thought that would carry over because he, like I said, he's been on the news here. He was the name that they knew. Everybody knows someone who's been helped out by him in some way. So yeah, I thought that would carry the day. But I think once that got tainted, by what his actual business practices were, and I don't think that it's necessarily a race thing. I think that this is a smaller city, and maybe people in general I don't think are as well read on everything that's happening. So when someone random comes to your door and tells you these stories of these things, it's confirmation bias. You're gonna reject what you already don't believe, and you're just going to accept and make excuses for how you already feel. And they literally did that. I talked to voters who said, well, that girl probably lied about her age and all kinds of stuff like that.
You know, I heard all those comments.
That was just kind of like weird stuff here.
Yeah, just
I heard
stuff
a lot
that
of those
people
comments,
just
but at the end of the
tried to make
day,
it work.
people didn't buy it, and
Yeah,
they
no,
did
no,
reject
that's
Joe
true.
Morrissey
No, but
by a lot.
I'm just saying, I think that it was justified that people were worried that it was going to happen because
Sure.
of the entire history of him getting elected over and over again to all these positions.
And I think what you also saw in these communities, which is indicative of kind of a lot of all of elections, is we would canvass in these neighborhoods, we'd do events in these neighborhoods, and you'd see a lot of vocal Morrissey support. So maybe to the average person, if you go and talk to them, they're like, "Oh, I'll vote for Morrissey," because they don't want to go against what's going on in their community. But once they get in that voting booth, they'll be like, "No, I'm not going to vote for Morrissey. I'm going to vote."
That was
for
also kind of the Trump thing too.
Yeah.
Talking about a lot of the polls, a lot of people didn't want to admit they were going to vote for Trump, and they went and voted for Trump.
I don't buy that though. I really think that the polls were wrong because they were wrong. I think that there's some systemic errors in our
That's true.
polling systems, and but back to Joe. I just it's distressing that. I mean, what was his end? It was like 16-17%. I could be totally wrong here, but his end
but he
vote,
got half.
It's distressing that he got that amount, but the fact is these people that the media were freaking out about and political scientists were freaking out about, and we had worldwide media coming here and saying Joe Morrissey is poised for an easy victory in the Richmond mayor's race. And it just wasn't true. And, and I think
People that didn't
that
know Richmond.
I think that
Yeah.
that is a fundamental, and I think a lot of it was from, again, the local media institutions that don't bother to get outside of their bubble. They don't bother to go into these communities. They were just making a lot of assumptions about these voters. And even as far back, and Harry can probably corroborate this, but even as far back as the summer when the campaign was really revving up, we met a lot of people who were open to new information. And maybe they were supporting Joe, but they weren't blindly supporting Joe. They knew about his liabilities, and they were open to new candidates. Even, a candidate who's white, which I think is, constantly people were saying, oh, it's no one's going to vote for a white candidate. It's going to be a black. People are not.
Yeah.
We turned
I
a
think
lot of
that's-
voters. We turned a lot. We turned a lot of voters.
And I think people assume, people give this like leeway to like West End white folks that they are willing to be racially, neutral and vote for whichever candidate best represents their interests or that they most agree with, but they're not willing to extend that same, opinion to East End voters, to North Side voters, to African American voters in the city. They're like, oh, they're just going to vote for the black candidate. They're going to vote for the candidate that is, the candidate of black voters, like Joe Morrissey tried to represent himself.
Right.
And I think that was just really insulting.
Or as his staffer said, he'd be the black mayor.
Yeah, as his
The first
campaign
black-
manager said, the first black mayor of Richmond.
Incredibly
Absolutely
insulting on so many levels.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that.
So many.
There was a lot of behind the scenes stuff,
Yeah.
I think, going on in that campaign that I would love to have been a fly on the wall.
I would have loved to have stayed in the house after the reporters left, and Myrna was like, "Get the fuck
man.
out of the house."
Poor Myrna. God bless her.
It's not too late, Myrna. You can still be saved.
Oh, God bless her.
Yeah, but just quick things, like I think that the early polling was because of name recognition. I know I'm going to keep
Yeah.
making this argument
Yeah.
that he's been in this city for a very long time. But beyond that, like, how many pieces of mail did you guys do in the last 3 weeks? How many doors did you guys knock on? How much of a ramp did you have in volunteers and field staff? You guys got out your message and then became identifiable. So it makes sense.
And
to
LeVar
me
did the
that-
same thing too. So
Absolutely.
you had two campaigns that were really working at their highest gear, and I'm really, I obviously LeVar is not my first choice for mayor,
Right.
but
Was your second?
He was my second. He was my second. He
Yeah.
was my second choice. And I think, although I really liked all the candidates running except for Joe, I really have a lot of respect for everybody who.
And Bobby Junes, obviously,
got
was
out
definitely a
there.
highlight for you.
Bobby Junes is a statesman. I think that's the only word
Bobby
for him.
June's mayoral, his yard sign will be forever a fixture in my
God, it's
house.
beautiful, isn't it?
It is beautiful.
The best that MS Paint has to offer.
Oh. Do you know anything about the methodology behind the polling? Whether it was automated, whether it was live
No,
polling,
Christopher Newport
whether
did
it
they- I
was
think they did- I think
cell
they did-
phones,
Each
or
poll
whether
had
it
a
was
fairly
landlines.
each poll had a fairly different methodology,
Online.
and I think each poll had a pretty big asterisk, affixed to it.
But I mean, they would poll 300 voters out of a 250,000 person city.
Yeah.
It just leaves a
Well, the
significant margin of
chamber
error.
poll was a lot more comprehensive, and people wanted to write it off because the chamber had endorsed Jack. But
What did
if
it
you
say?
actually, It had Jack, I think, winning 3 districts.
But we also can admit that
and it was also several months before.
the realtor
election
poll
day.
was definitely biased, right?
I won't admit that. I think it was probably
Because
pretty.
they were trying to promote that everywhere, man. That Twitter was like,
Well,
they were
we-
trying to tweet it every Megan Rose.
Sure,
Like, look at
sure.
the realtor poll. Look at the
Well,
realtor
it was
poll.
at that time, wasn't it like
I
one
think
of 2 polls?
methodologically, it was the I don't think any of these polls were very were super solid, but methodologically, that one had the largest sample size. It had the best weighting of young people and older voters. I think that one was probably the most
The chamber one or the realtor one?
the
Realtor, you said, right?
oh man, which one am I talking about? Oh jeez.
Well, he
I've
said a
conflated
lot about
these
the
two.
realtor poll, and then
You were previously talking about the chamber one, but I brought up the realtor
Yeah,
one.
I think I mean the shit. Which one had? One of them had several. I can't believe I can't remember this. One of them
okay.
had several hundred. It's been a long few months.
well,
Jack.
the
One of them had several hundred people in each district, which
Yeah.
was
I think
far
the-
more than any other
the
poll. And I can't
last,
remember if that was
I think the
realtor or
last
chamber.
poll had the most people, but it also was mostly. I think it was like it was something 40% of people in that poll, if not more, were undecided.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
It was just sort of
That
like,
was, that
well,
was
But-
a lot of the polls
yeah.
had undecided, and that was just like, okay,
That was the-
obviously
yeah,
they
yeah.
all
I'm-
went for Stoney and Barry in the last
Yeah,
stretch.
I'm talking about the realtor poll, which had the realtor poll had the most number of people sampled in each district. People wanted to write that off because they'd endorsed Jack already before the poll was released. But that one methodologically, I think, was the most sound, and it also ended up being, I think, closest. If you like took out the undecideds, and ended up being actually closest.
Yeah.
Chamber. Realtors endorsed Stoney.
Yeah, realtor.
No,
No,
it
no,
was-
no.
the
The
realtors
realtors
endorsed
endorsed
Barry.
us.
Wait, they did?
It was the Real Estate
Oh,
Association.
It's
I think,
confusing. There were
endorsed-
too many
yeah.
small special interest organizations.
Yeah, we can all agree on that.
Yeah.
And
they all donated
too
to
many
one of 2
forums,
campaigns.
too many forums, too many small interest groups.
Way too many fucking forums.
Yeah, I think
God.
I think aside from the media's really, I think insulting coverage of Joe Morrissey voters.
Yeah.
I think the second biggest problem in this election was the forums. I mean,
Yeah.
it really
But
took
the
away.
best forum was definitely the Criminal Justice Forum held by New Virginia Majority,
yeah. That was
the
a-
NAACP.
That was a great forum.
At the downtown library.
I liked that one.
It's a great forum.
Obviously,
Sorry,
yeah.
I'm
That one.
Yeah, David Powell doesn't work for the Virginia Majority. He's just a big fan
Well-
of them. You know, that's why he brings it up, because obviously he's just a local guy who just talks about politics. He doesn't work for a company that specializes in them. You know, I don't know.
Specializes in what? Helping people out?
I saw this great meme going around that was like, George Soros sponsors everybody I hate. It's just like this thing of like all the Republicans, whenever they're like, I bet they're sponsored by George Soros. Like I think that like every time, because I worked briefly for New Virginia Majority, which David may or may not work for, but
Many people have said that David works for New Virginia.
Listen.
we cannot confirm or deny these reports.
We
Listen,
gotta-
they had over 400 employees this year.
I think
so
we
who
gotta
knows?
we gotta shut it down until everybody knows what's going on.
Exactly.
Until we know what's
Exactly. But I remember I told my dad that I was looking for an organization that was registering voters. I said nonpartisan, just registering everybody who wants to vote, whether they're Republican or Democrat. And he was like, well, who sponsors it? George Soros? And I was like, Dad, I fail to see how it's a problem with your party if you're worried that more voters equals less support from you. Like, that's how Republicans win elections, is they win by, less people. That's why gerrymandering exists and all that. But that's definitely a big problem that they have. But
I wouldn't say that gerrymandering is exclusively a Republican.
no, it's
issue.
not. It's not.
No,
But-
Maryland.
but-
yeah, but we're
the
gonna take
reason,
advantage of what we can get, Jim.
but that also was the red strategy, and that's why we lost in 2010, and that's why we're
Yeah.
going to continue to lose the House for the next fucking 10 years.
What is it?
Yeah.
Is
That
it
was
69 out of 99 state legislators are held by Republicans.
Because
Wow,
of
they have a
gerrymandering.
super
That was their idea.
majority.
That was their
Unless
strategy.
Democrats lose if it's like 1 or 2 more. It's.
I mean, they wrote books about that. That was their idea. That was how they did it.
Yeah.
They walked in and they
sure.
said, take over state legislatures, we can cut out the districts, and then that way we can win the House.
They're smart. So like, what the heck is the DLCC doing? is
Oh
what
man,
I'd like to
Democrats
know.
are just not good at winning things.
Like,
it turns
what's
out.
the- like,
I mean, let's talk about Chuck Schumer, really? Not a revolutionary.
Yeah, I don't
Not
know.
inspiring. I mean,
Oh,
like,
sure.
he's a cool guy. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I like him. He doesn't seem like that bad a dude.
He's great on Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Is he?
But he's just too. I mean, he's just too establishment-y. Like the big call in the Democratic Party after this, horrible upset was we need to have more revolutionary candidates, more populist candidates, and Schumer is just.
Well, he's from New York, and so he can raise a lot of money for his
Schumer's
colleagues.
just Harry Reid. He's just Harry Reid. It's just the same thing.
Policy-wise, I think they have a lot of distinctions, especially on foreign policy.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is that if you're trying to engage the middle America, I don't think Chuck Schumer's going to be able to reach out that much.
I don't know that the Democrats have anybody who can do that. I think that they've been
Other
very
than Sanders.
I don't agree with that either.
And you and I disagree on Sanders a lot.
I think that I think the Democrats are really in a lot of trouble. I don't think that
What about Warren? You don't think Warren can do it?
I think that she is
Who do you want to run in 2020 against Trump?
Tim Kaine.
Tim Kaine?
Tim Kaine 2020 starts today.
Maybe.
I'm on board.
I mean,
He said he's not going to do it, but
not.
that's exactly what you would say if you weren't going to run. So.
Well, Warren said he wasn't going to do it, and she didn't do it.
Mark Warner is 100% more likely to run than Tim Kaine. If a senator from Virginia is
I think
going to
he's
run,
more
it's going
likely
be
to
Mark
want to run.
Warner.
I don't know that he's more likely to get the backing of the party
I think
donors.
Tim Kaine has that now national recognition that is really great to boost him for the next
But he also
years.
fucked up in the VP debate. He didn't do a good job.
I don't even think that matters. Who watched
But
that?
No
debate?
one
I mean,
watched it,
completely
but I
wrong.
watched
it.
His debates, and
wait.
look where we are now.
Wait.
Yeah.
Wait.
He didn't fail. He did exactly what he was trying to do.
Yeah,
He wanted to
agreed.
come out as a bulldog, and he wanted to come out as if he was deposing someone on the stand, and that's exactly how he conducted
Yeah,
it.
his job was to remind everybody that Mike Pence is running alongside Donald Trump, and he did that at every turn, and I think
And
that's
Pence
fine.
is there so that when Donald Trump gets assassinated, he's president. And everyone's like, oh, yeah, Donald Trump got assassinated. And then you're like, oh, fuck.
This one
I would
even worse.
I would rather he get impeached.
But, I mean, the thing is that,
I'm not going to advocate for the assassination of the president of the United States.
No, but I mean, Pence is worse. Everyone thinks Pence is so cool.
Trump identified as a Democrat for a long time.
Exactly.
Which is the thing. Mike Pence is this guy that has just
He has a track record of being a crazy person.
track record of draconian beliefs on things.
Yeah. Gay conversion therapy, abortion, funerals.
Yeah.
Crazy shit.
Yeah.
Crazy shit that people on the right are just like, oh, yeah, I fucking love that abortion shit. Yeah, give it to me. Oh, my God. Babies aren't babies are people, but fetuses aren't people. Sorry. Babies are people.
Oh, God, until the bat mitzvah, I mean,
Honestly, it should not be a crime before 12. No.
Oh, you got to edit all that out, right?
I think that is. I don't disagree with you on any of that, but I think that sort of.
Bat mitzvah abortion.
Yeah. I think it's fine. No, but I definitely am Mike Pence is terrible, and his beliefs are really, I think,
Horrible.
repellent. But those beliefs are represented by a large
That's a
swath
huge-
of America, and
that's
I
a
think
huge
that's
problem.
It's a problem, but I think that the solution is not is I don't know. I think Democrats have really messed up by, the basket of deplorables thing that Hillary did was, I think, kind of in a microcosm, everything that's wrong with the Democratic Party and everything that's wrong. And I think the responses to baskets of deplorable were super dumb. I don't have a lot of sympathy for Republicans who are upset about that, but I think that betrays a certain, smugness and a certain amount of superiority, and that's why Democrats lose because Americans know. And by I mean, right-wing Americans, conservative Americans, they know what Democrats think about them.
Yeah.
They're not dumb.
We say it in all the fucking comedy shows all the time.
Well, yeah. It's nonstop. All you got to do is turn on late night TV, and I can, even though I don't agree, and even though I'm not in that place, I can see why conservative, older white Americans, have such a visceral reaction to the Democratic Party and to liberals.
Not even older.
Yeah.
Not even older.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is that, it's kind of what I touched on in the monologue, is that there's certain things we just can't argue about. There's certain things, they're never going to be able
Well,
to see
I
our
would
side.
like to argue about some of the things
I
that
would
you said
love
in
to
the
argue,
monologue.
yeah. But the thing is that there's certain things we can't, there's certain things that you can't fix them. There's certain things, they're just so warped and such in this weird, Breitbart inspired, Fox News injected, don't listen to anything they say because it might be trying to turn you.
Yeah.
They put up a wall, and there's no way to, I don't see a way to break that. If someone, like I said, if someone calls Michelle Obama an ape,
Right.
I don't see a way to reason with that person.
Oh, yeah,
and be like, hey, let me tell you about how, she's a good person. All this stuff. If you think she's an ape, That's a weird ingrained belief you have. You are backwards. Like there's not much I can do to like reach common ground.
Ezra
Tell me
Klein-
how. I mean, you look like you're trying to correct me, but I don't think there's
Not
a way.
correct you.
I don't think there's a way to do it.
Not correct you, and I don't believe that. You know, I don't believe that compromising the core values that are at the heart of the current Democratic Party is what it's going to take. I think it's going to just try. Because the same progressive values that I hold dear and that moved a lot of people this year, also moved those white working class voters. A lot of them voted, I'll bet you, a lot of them voted in the primaries for Bernie Sanders. If we have a populist economic message, if we talk about the issues that are actually happening in these communities instead of calling them a basket of deplorables, and we try to bring them into what we already believe and what we're already trying to work for as the hopefully progressive Democratic Party moving forward, because I think that's the direction that we need to swing. If we talk about wage issues, if we talk about workers' rights,
I mean,
if we talk about
Democrats really-
healthcare,
I
They're
think
the
that
union party.
if you look at
Yeah.
people who voted for, and the Democrats are losing the union vote. A lot of
And they
unions
should be
voted
because
for Republicans.
Republicans have voted for
But
right to work clause.
If you look at and numbers are still coming in, so we're still actually counting ballots. Exit polls are still being tabulated for the national election, but right now it
still
looks like
won.
as many as 60% of people who voted for Donald Trump also consider him unfit for office. So you look at this minority of American voters who voted for Donald Trump, and the majority of those people still have serious reservations about Trump, and for some reason they chose Trump as the lesser of two evils. And I disagree with that choice. I voted for Hillary Clinton. I'm very proud to have done so. But, there are a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump who also are like, I think it's horrible that he says things about women and minorities and that kind of stuff. And I think Ezra Klein, who your mileage may vary with his stances and his writing, but he is a very interesting thing he's been harping on a lot since the election, that Democrats need to, and not just Democrats, liberals, need to find a way to talk to Americans and to talk about Americans who voted for Trump without immediately jumping on the really. There are a lot of racists, right, in this country who voted for Donald Trump. People call Michelle Obama an ape. I don't want any part of that. I don't want to talk to them. I'm fine writing those people off. But there's a lot of people who aren't like that who voted for Donald Trump, and Democrats got to find a way to talk to them and talk about them in a way that isn't alienating.
There's a middle ground. I do think Basket Deplorables comment was somewhat accurate. I do think that 5 to 7% of this country, I don't think I'll ever be able to fix them. I don't care how many conversations we have. I don't care if they come on the show and have a fucking drink. Like, I'm never going to be able to tell somebody who said Michelle Obama has ape arms that progressive values are, we're never going to be able to agree on anything. There is a certain percent of the country we can write off, and a certain percent of the country should go, and a certain percent of the country that if they hadn't voted, Hillary Clinton would be president.
Sure.
But there is that middle ground of, like you said, of people who voted for Trump as a fuck you to Bill Maher said that the problem a lot of liberals have is that some of them will just spend too much time cleaning up this little speck in the corner and ignore the whole mess right here. And we have a lot of liberals who do that shit. We have a lot of liberals who are just too PC, get crazy shouting at college professors, I need a safe space. And I support safe spaces when you need them. I have no problem with that. There's some people who have gone through some stuff and some people who just don't understand, people who are transgender who experience abuse do need, some kind of alternative to what they have experiences we can't understand as people who are cisgender white males. We're never going to be able to understand the experiences of a minority or the experiences of someone who's experienced sexual assault. We're not going to have those. So maybe we should just let it be. But I think there's also people who just go take it too far and alienate people in the process and make us laughing stock and say they pushed Condoleezza Rice as a speaker. People who protest against there was the Dutch Muslim woman who I forgot her name, but she fantastic speaker, but she was kicked out of the university for commencement speech. They protested so much, and if you can't only have voices that agree with you, that's a problem. We don't like Condoleezza Rice. You can still let her speak at your commencement speech. It's not she's going to say the Iraq War is okay and go out and do what you want. She's going to just give you experience of I'm a successful black woman who was in the executive branch of the
There has to be room
House.
for honest disagreement.
Exactly.
And that goes both ways.
The experience can't be get out of my face and don't talk to me about it.
Yeah,
the experience has to say I have to listen to your opinion. There are some things we shouldn't listen to, like Breitbart, who just says fucked
Sure.
up shit just
Absolutely.
for fun. There are some things that's not discourse. But we should be able to have a discourse with someone who, is right-leaning, or, the discourse should not be get out of my face. The discourse should be, let me hear what you have to say before I get mad about it.
I think one of the big issues and one of the reasons why we can't have a lot of these honest discourses is one thing that you touched on is obviously, the smugness of liberals, just like let's show pie charts and just talk about the facts and statistics and that'll be enough to convince people. But I think two, the thing that is way more important is that we're, not offering any alternatives. We're not talking to these people about the issues that are important to them. We're not speaking to anything that has to do with their livelihoods. So if we're not doing that, that gives a space for the Republicans to come in and make sure that we don't have the investment in education infrastructure in their areas where they're going to be able to, be. Well, actually, I want to separate those two things. I want to say the second and most important part is I feel like a disenfranchisement and a separation of these people in these communities from education and from infrastructure. I think that literally it is in Republicans' best interest to disenfranchise their own voters, because if there is less money,
education, the more likely to vote Republican.
Less education, less access to good-paying jobs, like less access to. Yeah, and I think it's only going to continue. I think we see that in Central Virginia. Like, why don't we have any kind of like light rail or high-speed rail, or why isn't the airport gotten larger? There's all kinds of reason to invest in that. We have all kinds of different global leaders and all kinds of industries coming to work with our great university system, but we don't have the infrastructure to support it and to spread that wealth into more higher paying jobs so that the South Side and the Southwest can benefit. And I think that every time infrastructure packages and things like that come up, it's the Republicans. So I'm really interested to see what happens with Donald Trump's infrastructure package, because
really interesting.
Because they're going to fight it. They're going to fight it because they actually want to hold down a large percentage of their people, because I think that they are invested in making sure that they can't get educated and that they can't reach a level of fulfillment where they can worry about politics. If you're out in rural West Virginia and you're worried about like having shoes and having a roof that's not caving in over your head, you're not worried as much about politics. And if you're told over and over again not to listen to different types of media by a certain source, and you're not already a critical thinker, then you can't look at the source that was first telling you that over and over again and use that same kind of logic against them that they're telling you not to use.
So much of this, you just Google something and you can figure out it's fake.
Well, as someone who comes from a very rural county in Virginia, I can say, and this is a symptom of politics in general, is that there's, to a large part, there's not even an acknowledgement of how undereducated and under, the lack of basic resources that these places have. You're talking about people that do, like you're saying, Google something, they don't have access to the internet. This is something that politics to them is like another sports game that they're not interested in. They don't even begin to think about it because they don't see the direct connection, because the education system's failed them. Or it's not so much they failed them, it's that they had to start working at a much younger age in order to sustain themselves and their family. Like that's the big disconnect. So even these rural areas that we're seeing going mightily for red, mightily for Donald Trump, there's a huge population that isn't even voting in those areas because they're disconnected from it.
What do you think is a big motivating factor in them for politics? What do you think is?
I mean, what I genuinely believe with this came down to this especially this election with Donald Trump is they were able to say to these working class people that have lost their jobs and seen their quality of life decrease, they were able to tell them that the reasons you lost your job were X, Y, and Z, Muslims, Mexicans, and
China.
China. Not not free trade policies and all these
not
larger,
right to work laws.
Yeah, not right to work laws, not these much larger, much more complex systems. If you can tell these rural people that person over there is the reason you have lost your job, it's much easier for them to process, because that's just human nature, is to be tribal in that sense and blame someone else.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that's what we saw in a huge part of this election, is that, it was that that Donald Trump was able to tap into this undercurrent and blame groups and give them a reason to hate these groups and play on that. And I firmly believe, in a situation where there is less ignorance in the system, that wouldn't have happened. But
I don't disagree with a lot of these issues. I think a lot of these criticisms of rural conservative America are accurate.
It's not about
But
them,
I
it's
think
about the
that-
people holding them down.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, and I think that's true too. But I also think that it's very easy to look at the group that voted for Trump and say that they're the problem. I think it's also a problem, the liberal America, how they reacted to this election, how they didn't turn out for their nominee, how they didn't support her, how they were willing
Half
to...
the country didn't vote.
Half the country didn't
Half the
vote.
country
This was a
didn't
low
vote.
turnout election. And, a lot of, you look at Hillary Clinton and she actually, it looks, and again, we're still actually counting votes. We're still not totally sure on the demographic breakdown of who voted and who didn't and who they voted for. But it's looking right now like Hillary Clinton underperformed with almost every minority group in America, which goes against like common sense, right? Donald Trump is the most openly...
Donald-
Donald Trump was the most
Donald-
openly racist candidate
and he got
to run
8%
for
of the
president
black
in
vote.
our lifetime. So there's
way too much of
something
the Hispanic
going wrong with Democrats and the Democratic Party and how they address people and how they take their constituencies for granted. That I think needs to be addressed. The problem isn't just conservative voters and it isn't just the Republican Party. The problem is the Democratic Party. They have a huge structural issue where they are not servicing the needs of their supporters in a way that inspires loyalty. And not in the way that Republicans, again, 60% of Republicans, maybe, according to some data that's out there, believe that Donald Trump was unfit for office and voted for him anyway. That speaks to their party's organizational skills and their party's messaging that they were able to inspire loyalty and get a bunch of good soldiers to come behind a candidate they didn't necessarily believe should be president.
Yeah.
And Democrats just failed at that. And I think that it's very easy to point fingers and say, oh, Trump's voters gave us this and Trump voters gave us that. Well, they're a minority of the country, number one. And number two, clearly there's a problem on the Democratic side of things because Hillary Clinton, frankly, should not have lost this election.
well, I will say this:
She didn't technically.
She did technically.
As a lifelong Democrat, I will say the Democratic Party, and as most progressive movements are, we are plagued with a mentality of we have a lot more single-issue voters and a lot more people that tend to, if their movement gets usurped, take it much more heartfelt than the Republican Party. So, I mean, I think I saw one great tweet, and I can't remember where it was from. It was like, if people talk about like, oh, if Bernie ran, he would have won. Yes, because the Hillary Clinton supporters, which tend to be more lifelong Democrats, would have been like, okay, we'll fall in line like we've done before. We will support the candidate. And I think that's a big issue. And I'm also...
There's also some point that, Bernie did bring in some people that weren't Democrats
Yeah.
originally.
But Bernie, I want to push back on this. Bernie lost the primary by a lot. He was never even close to winning. Like any prayer, anybody who thought that Bernie was going to win the nomination, we're not looking at the numbers. And the idea that somebody who so underperformed in the primary as a challenger against a
wouldn't say
very weak
underperformed,
candidate,
but
against Hillary Clinton, obviously a very weak candidate.
He
She
had no
was
name
been beaten
recognition.
before. She'd been
the fact that he built what he
Barack
built
Obama
and was
didn't
able
have
to
any
do all,
name recognition.
he had the he did. Listen, I was 13 years old and I knew who Barack Obama was in 2004 because he gave the DNC keynote speech. He became an
I don't think
ultra
you're
superstar.
representative of most voters.
They
in
talked
America
about
at
him
that point.
in on television all this time while he was a freshman senator from Illinois. Like he had way more name recognition.
I
through
just
popular
disagree with
culture.
you on that. But
Was Bernie Sanders 4 years before he ran? Was he referenced on Will and Grace, Sex and the City, or any other major
Bernie
sitcoms?
Sanders has been in
Bernie
Congress
was
for
with
decades.
Daily
Show.
For decades,
Show,
Bernie
yeah.
Sanders was in Congress.
I don't think any of us here are accurate representations of the standard electorate.
That's definitely true.
Like,
But I don't think that the idea that Bernie would have done better than Hillary, I think, is just really foolish. If
But
he
his
couldn't have-
demographic overlapped with Clinton.
I think that his campaign was a success. I mean, like he came from nowhere. He was
Sure,
an independent,
I'm
became a
I'm not
Democrat,
saying
and
that's
then completely
wrong.
fundamentally changed the platform.
He definitely was a success. I think that's true. And sure, he got further than a lot of people thought he was going to. But the idea that he had a shot at winning the nomination, I think, was always kind of a pipe dream. And the idea that if you could go back in time and nominate Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton and somehow he would have beaten Donald Trump, I think that just doesn't hold up. Because the constituencies that lost the election for Hillary are the constituencies that Bernie never had any traction with in the primary.
That's fair.
And
Well,
Bernie Sanders
I don't
never
know.
had any negative ads
Michigan,
run against him.
Wisconsin,
Hillary
Ohio.
never got a negative against Bernie. She never aired any negative ads. She never attacked his record as a, frankly, very unproductive congressman. She never attacked his ideology as being very left of most Americans. And you know that if he had been the Democratic nominee, it would have been nothing but a torrent. It would have been so easy for Donald Trump to make the election a referendum on Bernie Sanders. And the way he won was by making it a referendum on Hillary Clinton. I think that would have been even easier if Bernie Sanders was the nominee.
Well, the thing is that the thing I understand though is that also, the things that Trump advocates for are very socialist concepts. I mean, tell me Apple to make phones in the United States. That's a socialist concept. That's a government takeover of business.
Sure, yeah.
I mean,
protectionist.
he would have, yeah, exactly. He would have had. I mean, he is fascist, but he's so far, in that weird area that he's partly left. I mean, that's where he comes from. Is that
Well, I mean, it's all forms of circle. And I think what you're doing with Donald Trump is also him saying we're going to make iPhones in the United States. It's just, again, more insane Donald Trump things.
Yeah.
Like, they're not. These were just blanket statements he was making in order to appeal to his.
And what's funny is like the way to get iPhones and more pieces of the iPhones made in the United States is to invest in the same kinds of programs that Democrats have been talking about, for 4 or 5 years now. We need to have affordable trade schools where we're giving people associate degrees for skilled labor jobs, because that's why we make all those detailed parts in Germany, is because they require you to do some form of that education where you can start earlier in high school. If we can start setting up those tracks, and we keep talking about it, everybody's been running on it at local levels.
I'm not saying the
We need to
Republicans
make
have
it
the
happen.
answer to these problems, but I'm saying that they have done a much better job at convincing voters they've the answer to
They're
these
like,
problems.
they don't even know, even know how, but they're like, we're going to make it happen.
That was the
That's
great
what people
success
wanna hear.
of this campaign was blaming everybody else, like you talked about, was blaming everybody else for the problems that Republicans actually created, and the Democrats have been on the opposite side of, for the most part. Progressive candidates have said this is the wrong solution, and the Republicans have been over there telling them that the Muslims and Hispanics are the problem, and it's like, no, Wall Street's the problem, right to work laws are the problem, the minimum wage not being raised, that's the problem.
So, can we pause? Because I have to pee so
Oh my
Yeah,
God, me too.
Yeah,
Oh
I could
my
tell you
God.
started moving your chair too, and I was like, he feels the
Don't
same
cross the
way.
streams, bro. Don't cross the streams.
I'm gonna go first.
All right.
Alright.
Okay, I'm gonna do a promo here. This is Jim Beam. You know Jim Beam. You mix that with ginger beer. It's good as shit. I've been drinking that, and then we took shots of Atomic Hot, which is Pinnacle's version of Fireball. It's great. There's two. You want to do another one? You doing two in a row?
Are we
He
doing
didn't do it. He didn't get one.
Oh, you didn't get one? Yeah,
No.
yeah, there's two. Oh, they're right. There's four. I'm sorry.
There's three.
My
in
math
there.
isn't very good.
It's all right.
That's why we lost the election. Bad Democratic math.
Ooh.
Your math is about as good as Katie Tour's.
Here, I'm gonna have this one.
She's a nice lady. They should be nice.
You're gonna get some hot cranberry, I guess.
Oh, cool.
Actually, doesn't sound too bad.
I love a good mixed shot.
Cinnamon and cranberry.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like a
it could be
shooter.
good. Could be good.
something
Could
like
be.
that.
Could be. Who knows?
Yeah,
I guess Harry will see.
Deep Eddies cranberry. Deep Eddies, Austin, Texas. Best flavor vodka you can get. I'll tell you that right now. They have lemon. They have peach. They have cranberry. They have iced tea, and they're just basic vodka. Pretty good shit. So buy that shit.
We used to have a Deep Eddies lemonade at that place we worked.
Oh yeah, Deep Eddies Lamar, so good.
All right.
Oh.
Cheers, y'all.
Cheers.
All right.
Woo.
At least it's
That
not
is
butterscotch.
And in case I get this episode edited in time, a few ABC reminders. Tuesday, Tasting Tuesday, all local ABC stores are having
There's
tasting
no way
events.
you're gonna edit this by Tuesday.
We'll see how drunk I get tonight. 3 to 5 and 6 to 8 on Tuesday. Also, Wednesday, if you buy $20 or more, you get a free mini of Crown Vanilla, which I think is like $4. That's a good fucking deal. Thursday, they're closed, obviously.
Why is it closed on Thursday?
Shut the fuck up. Why don't you like Crown Vanilla?
I don't know. Flavored whiskey just seems like.
I love that the state-run organization ABC is making like deals. Like I want to see the bureaucrats that are in charge of the deals.
Yeah,
Oh, I know,
I want
right?
the DMV to start cutting the deals.
Oh, right, yeah. Come to Black Friday sale, get your driver's license.
Half
10%
off, you're,
yeah.
you're changing your car title.
Yeah.
Speaking of Black Friday, ABC Black Friday sale.
Yeah, they do.
If you get under $50, it's 10% off. Between, I think it's over 50 or over 75. It's 15%. 15% off on Friday and Monday, Cyber Monday. The same deals, but if you shop online, you can have them order pickup in the store. Same deals. Good shit. Get all your liquor shopping done this season at that time because they don't really offer any other discounts because it's a government-run agency.
So, like, are you hoping to get in with ABC?
Yeah, bro, man. I need to cut me an endorsement check like every week, man. Like, hey, what brands you want me to promote? Who out of my 130 viewers would you like to buy your product? Of which 15% are likely to purchase. So
How many of those 100, or how many did you say, 300? How many of them are you watching it over and over?
That's just savage. Come on.
You caught me, sir. You caught me.
Damn.
No,
And that's when nothing that I
I'll
said
tell you,
got edited out.
none of
the
those viewers
episode.
are me. I'll say that.
You? Have you seen an episode?
I saw an episode when Jimmy told me that I needed to do this.
I watched half of an episode this morning.
good.
And it was a good half of an episode.
Yeah,
That's
perfect.
good.
I watched an episode of Rebecca Keel. so
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like-
See, but,
She's a nice lady.
yeah, but motherfucking Joe Rogan, all right, can have a 4-hour podcast, and that's like the fucking top 10 in the iPod, like in the iPod
Listen,
thing.
Joe Rogan had a very successful Quake clan. So.
Look, but I don't understand. Like,
I don't
like if he can have a 4.5-hour podcast, how can an hour of political discussion, broken up by a
Well, what is Joe Rogan talking about?
I don't even know. I saw 4 hours and I said, fuck this. I'm not going to listen to this shit. It's too fucking long.
Did you ever think that maybe we're just not interesting?
Maybe we're not interesting. I don't know.
I think it's the table.
I think it's honestly, you gotta upgrade the team.
You know what's so fucking annoying?
Oh, I totally meant to like have this joke where I was gonna be like, I'm really happy to be here at the table podcast with the Cheats Movement. And I was gonna act like this was like I didn't know that this was not the
As
table.
my interest,
I totally forgot about that joke. I was gonna say.
Also, motherfucking Mark Robinson, God bless him, I love him. But
Oh, yeah,
also,
me too.
Mark Robinson has refused to come on my show because of conflicts with his editor. Some shit. But they're going the Cheats Movement because there's no alcohol involved.
It's very
Look,
good.
Mark Robinson, you can come on my show whenever you want. You don't have to drink. It's optional, okay? But
Wait,
we
it's
love-
optional?
Yes, optional.
Oh, boy.
If I had known that this whole time, I would have abstained.
Yeah,
Is that
I mean,
what
I've just been convincing myself that I'm taking the sacrament every time.
I will say now that I've done this, I'm going to try and get on that Cheats movement.
Yeah, you gotta fill in your little punch
every
card,
RBA podcast.
and then
yeah.
we'll be on the RVA Dirt.
Oh, God.
Just
I want
live,
to get
live tweet
on
a
RBA
conversation.
exclusively the blighted homes thing.
I've sat
That's my
next
thing.
to Melissa while she's live tweeting at several events, and it is legitimately very impressive how she's able to tweet so quickly.
I know, right?
As someone who's had to live tweet for the campaign, it's very difficult. It's
And
way
she's-
harder than you think.
And
it
she
is.
isn't like she's not even like spinning anything either. It's usually
No, it's just
speculative.
like straight. Yeah.
It's just like this is what they said. This is what they said. This
God
is what
bless
they said.
them.
I'm like,
God
okay,
bless
cool. I
them.
have to go there.
Every debate was just us looking at Twitter, just just blasting through.
Speaking
All
of
of 28.
tweets and debates,
Mhm.
Jimmy,
What'd I do?
you and I were first introduced on Twitter because you,
Oh my god.
Jimmy, said
So bitter. Such a little.
said, I'm not bitter.
I
just
have
had a
no
few
idea
drinks.
what's coming.
You said.
No idea.
I was
Salty.
hoping Nate would be funny. Instead, he was just sad funny.
And
You said that to me.
I stand by it. I stand by it.
and also,
That's
yeah.
really
I stand by it. I stand by it. You had a great opportunity to be hilarious. You were wearing a funny jacket, I think, as I recall.
I was wearing a suit.
And you stole everyone's websites, which was amazing. Which I will give so much props to you. I think that's the greatest thing that happened this whole election. Is you didn't get any of Jack's, I don't think.
No, because I bought Jack Barry, but I bought Barry.
There we go.
You know, he's a fucking enterprising dude.
He is enterprising.
He bought his way before he announced. He
plans ahead. He plans ahead.
Yeah, because no one else bought this ahead of time.
How did they not?
I was like, even if I was running for mayor in 2020, I would buy it now. Like, I would buy it now.
I think half the candidates already.
Have you?
No. Yes, I am gonna keep renewing them just in case. I'll pay that extra $10 a month just in case Jack Berry runs again. Jack Berry.
The fruit.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm a little mad about that too.
I totally forgot about that.
The thing is that my tone, I wasn't sure because I thought I was a serious candidate for a while. And
I love you, dude. I love you.
You know, I wanted a living wage and stuff. You know, I was campaigning on serious issues.
No, you did your homework. You found out how other municipal governments around the world.
I want to say
I studied the platform. I made a comprehensive document.
I want to say in our campaign we did not. Several candidates who didn't make it on the ballot, like you and Chad and Alan. We really were impressed by it, and we like there was not disrespect flying in the campaign. I was probably what I said on Twitter was probably the meanest thing anyone said about you, at least in our campaign.
But before that, you weren't working for Jack Berry, though.
That's
At the time
true.
you had tweeted that you were.
That is true. That is true.
When was that tweeted?
That was.
I just like was that at the Wilder?
The north side. No, it's the north side.
The north side.
I didn't get invited to the Wilder.
And that's really impressive because people could have said a lot meaner things.
Yeah, where's Fitzy Chesterfield? I want to see what he had to say.
Yeah.
Someone called me a carpetbagger. Someone called me a carpetbagger.
Well, let's be fair.
Well,
let's be fair.
I mean, no, but
you are from Nova.
I mean, I'm from Nova, but I mean, that was just. It just feels, even though it's like not really that big of an insult, the way carpetbagger just sounds like a bigger insult than it is. You know what I mean?
It's like the worst insult you could be called in this town.
It just sounds
like
horrendous.
the worst thing.
I mean, like even an act made of carpeting
Yeah,
material.
but it just sounds
on a
bad. Like
train.
carpetbagger. It just sounds, you know, it sounds very offensive.
It's an
You know,
old term.
I know, but it's just like, what? I moved from Nova because the rent was too expensive? I'm
I-
sorry.
This is one of the things that I love about Virginia, the Old Dominion, is the fact that anybody who moves here to do anything or even moves within the state to another area is immediately a carpetbagger.
Like, I'm from Richmond.
You come with here for 30 years, but if you were born in New York,
Like
you're a
what, if I'm in
carpetbagger.
Richmond and I go to Christiansburg, all of a sudden I'm a carpetbagger again.
yes,
Yes.
you will be.
Yeah.
I'd go like run for city council in Christiansburg.
Oh,
like,
hell
here's
yeah.
a two-time carpetbagger.
Oh yeah, double
Now,
carpetbagger.
from Nova to Richmond to Christiansburg.
Just moving around, and a political opportunist, really.
Carpet bagging motherfucker.
The Scott Brown of Virginia.
I just
Scott Brown in Virginia, yeah.
Just
I mean,
moving
like,
around.
New
trying to
Hampshire's
win
close to
races.
Massachusetts.
They have an overlapping media market.
Yeah. Oh, so-
That's,
I've already developed a relationship.
yeah.
They've seen me on TV before.
I'm a little more sympathetic to that than I think most people were. You know, it is. It's like what what's more important:
No,
the
they made
state
a
boundaries or the media market overlap. I
They
think,
made a great.
actually,
Well, he made a great argument about the fact that he spent so many of the summers of his childhood there. I was really impressed by that. He almost beat Jean Shaheen, and she's
Yeah.
like one of the
Yeah.
most popular, female
Yeah.
U.S. senators, and
Yeah.
that was crazy to me that he
Yeah.
almost won.
You said you had some problems with my monologue. Do you remember what those were? I've forgotten them already.
Yeah, I didn't like that you just were completely, giving away the white working class, like rural voters. Like, I don't think that it's enough. So let me explain what I think my strategy is, or not my strategy. I'm sorry, what I think the Democratic strategy should be moving forward. I think if you look across the country, you look at the returns, clearly there's a lot of work to be done with rebuilding. We're never going to get quite to the same levels of involvement, but rebuilding the Obama coalition. I think if we continue to register voters of color in the South, especially in North Carolina and Georgia, there's 1 million unregistered African Americans.
Georgia was a minute where it looked like she was going to win Georgia.
Georgia was only lost by 200,000 votes.
Yeah.
So if they register half of those people turned out, which is horrible because normally first-time voters, when you register in those demographics, turn out at like 70% if you do your job right.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy. Like, you can do it in a cycle. You can flip Georgia in a cycle. Florida just
Broward was up, right? What happened in Palm Beach? Why was it so close to 50-50? What happened in Miami-Dade?
Yeah.
But then you look at what I like to call Southern Alabama, the panhandle of Florida. They had incredible turnout to defeat Gwen Graham to take that congressional seat, but then also just like they were coming out of the woodwork. And that's something that we miss, I think, a lot. Like we're talking about like we didn't do enough to turn out minority voters and like we lost white working class voters, but then also people showed up and voted, not in Virginia, because people tend to be a lot more sensible.
Well, we got a lot
Virginia.
of federal jobs here. We got a lot of people who work for the federal government.
But I mean, in the rural areas, right? Even turnout was down even from 2012, which is crazy.
Are we looking at me for the rural areas?
Everyone.
Resident hayseed, Harry
Resident
Garnett.
hayseed, Harry Garnett.
Yeah, talk to us about why was turnout lower and why was there a disparity between Virginia? Why did we win Virginia by 5 points, which is larger than 2012 and 2008, but in other states, those white rural voters turned out in such huge amounts. Like, what is it about Virginia?
Well, Virginia is such an odd state in the sense that you can have an area like Northern Virginia, incredibly urbanized, incredibly diverse, tons of people coming over from different areas.
Very dense.
Yeah,
very dense.
Damn, I've never been prouder to be from Northern Virginia. I'm sorry, keep
coming
going.
over from vastly different parts of the planet to this one area outside of DC, and not just working in federal jobs, but working in the jobs of like Northrop Grumman and Boeing and all these incredible
military.
the military industrial complex sort of things, and but just all those things.
Whoa.
Yes.
Calm that down. Sorry, keep going. We don't like to acknowledge it because we're beneficiaries.
I suppose you guys are. There are no jobs where I'm from, so.
Well, move to Hampton Roads, move to Northern Virginia.
No, listen. We
keep
want to
going.
grow cows where I'm
Talk about the
heartland. But like you have this incredibly diverse place like Northern Virginia, and then you go out to rural Virginia, where I'm from, where more people go to VCU University than live in the county I'm from.
That's Virginia Commonwealth University.
Yeah, Virginia Commonwealth
University.
Yeah. But like cows outnumber people where I'm from. So I'm one of those cow people. I own those cows. But like you have this incredibly diverse, and it's so bizarre that like if you look at the map, it's blue, North Richmond and
the urban crescent,
yeah,
right?
As I understand, I mean, this was like the most divided between the urban areas and the rural areas. Even though there wasn't a lot of, turnout was depressed in these rural areas. I think if you look at the map compared to 2012 and 2008, like the red counties are way redder, and the blue cities are way bluer than they were 4 years.
Also, I know I'm super late with this joke, but I wanted to say, as a man who grew up around cows, you fantastic cow lick.
I do.
Boom.
Well, see, I was in charge of calves, people. So, which, fun fact, when they put their hooves in the water, all of a sudden don't like the water anymore, which is interesting for calves. Just saying.
They put their hooves in the water and they're like, no more.
Fun fact.
I don't know if that's fun.
Fun fact.
As a farmer, it was kind of
Getting pretty loosey-goosey with
but-
fun
I'm
facts
getting fun.
here.
I'm getting loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
I will say that, which is interesting. Like my hometown of Orange County, Virginia, and this town and like the city part of Orange, it's like slightly more people, went blue, and then like I think what we saw with this election was just what I really want to say is like there was so much of stuff that happened right before that election, especially with that FBI crap, that might have terminated a lot of.
Do you think if that didn't come out, this election goes differently? If Comey hadn't reopened?
The election, I think, was so close that any one thing could have flipped.
It's easy.
Any October surprise.
Like you're just talking about it.
I will
You're
never
talking about
say
a
it
couple
didn't
100,000
affect
votes in 3 states.
But
basically.
it's like 12,000 in Michigan.
Yeah,
It was like that's so close, and it was so clearly just done.
Does anybody know what Wisconsin was? What was the...
It's like if you go on like Google, it still like shows up as like white, as,
Yeah,
like,
I mean it's
red blue.
like not technically cold. I think, and like
right,
I
really?
don't think the registrar is called Wisconsin, or if they have, it was this week.
Yeah.
There's still a lot. I mean, there's still a lot of votes out there, which is why I think there are a lot of hot takes out there about like why Hillary lost this election, why Trump won it. I'm like, well, listen, we're still counting the ballots.
But
Okay,
also,
let's give it a minute.
Hillary won.
democratically.
You know, in a
You know, but
civilized
that's-
place
here's the
like
thing.
Europe,
This is-
we would.
I don't know.
We do
Listen,
direct
I don't know if any of you
democracy.
guys watch Survivor. Okay, I'm a huge Survivor fan. In
love
Survivor, it's not enough to get to the end. A lot of people, they'll get to the end. They'll be a finalist in Survivor, and they think they deserve to win. But then the jury, which are
All the
contestants on
people-
Survivor who were voted
Yep.
out, they vote against them, and they say, "I should have won. I got to the end." But like that's not the game. The game isn't getting to the end. It means getting to the end and convincing the jury of people you voted out to award you $1 million. And the
that's a
game
trick,
in the election,
yeah.
it's not a surprise that you had to win the Electoral College. It's been that way forever. The rules of the game are not.
But it should change.
And we
Well,
knew what it was.
I think that's a valid
It
question.
prevents third party.
That's
because
a valid-
if you
that's
have
fine.
if you have to get 270, let's say for one reason, let's say, imaginary scenario. Ross Perot somehow wins 150 electoral votes.
That's a lot of graphs for the next
I-
4
Right?
years.
That 100 electoral votes means that neither of the other two, Democrat or Republican, wins. Let's say, for instance,
So it goes
Ross
to the
Perot,
House of Representatives.
let's play Ross Perot wins 200 votes, and the other two candidates split, evenly, right? And they have to go to the House of Representatives and the Senate, because that's what happens every time there's a runoff. What's going to happen is that if you don't make 270, you have to go to the House and Senate, and the House and Senate are populated
It's just the
by
House. Just the
It's
House.
just the House.
yeah,
Just the House.
Either way, which is populated by not third-party candidates, not Ross Perovians, Republicans and Democrats,
Well, one, I think that's a failure of third-party candidates.
and they're going to vote. But they're going to vote. They're going to vote for their own guy.
Sure.
So even if Ross Perot won 200, and the other two won 180 or won 165, whatever the math is, that prevents the entry of third party. 270 is designed to prevent a third party. 270 is the minimum.
I
I
think
No,
it's
it's not.
fine. I don't necessarily know if I agree with you, but I think it's fine to say things have to change and we need reform. And
Why
we
do you
should
have more
open up.
parliamentary?
But,
And
Why
I
should
but
have
the
more than two
rules
parties?
were set before the beginning of the election. Hillary Clinton and the Democratic Party, they knew what the rules were.
Knew the
and
game,
they
knew the
didn't,
score.
And they didn't play, they just didn't have a good strategy. Their strategy was to assume that this blue wall was going to stay for her. Donald Trump people were giving him so much crap because Donald Trump was flying out to Wisconsin, to Michigan, to Pennsylvania, states where they're like, oh, he's not going to win, oh, he's behind 3 or 4 points, and that's what won him the election. So one candidate played the Electoral College, and one candidate played the popular vote. But everybody knows, before the game ever started, not that I think it's a game, it's much more serious than that, but before this whole contest ever started, we knew how the president gets elected. Hillary Clinton certainly knew how the president gets elected. She just failed to execute a strategy that would win the race. So
Well, I will say this in regards to I'm not in favor of electoral college. I think, to me, the president is the president of all the people of the United States. Why should we base it on a geographic system? It should just be most votes, because that's what most people want in the
I
country.
mean, geographically, what the math is, like one California voter is worth 3.5 or 4 Wyoming voters. It is ridiculous.
no,
how
it's
the math
the other
works
way
out.
around. It's
Yeah,
that
'cause
Wyoming voters are more important than California.
Yeah,
voters.
that's what-
Yeah,
But I
that's
want
what-
to,
no,
but I
fine,
want to,
yeah.
but I want to
4
push back
California
on
voters
this.
for 1 Wyoming
What-
voter. Yeah,
how
exactly.
how not great would it be if the president only had to campaign in New York City and California, and that's how they won the presidency, and those were the only people who mattered.
Well, I mean,
I do not want Donald Trump to be president. I wish he wasn't. And I think it's a very legitimate discussion to talk about reforming the Electoral College or abolishing. I don't have a problem with the discussion, but I think that the intent of the Electoral College, at least a plank of that, is to make sure that these states with low populations that have issues that are specific to those states will be addressed by the candidates. Because if you abolish the Electoral College, you would only have candidates campaigning in California and New York City, maybe like Texas.
Well,
and that would be the
And
end
the
of
most
it.
successful economies, though.
Well, what you're also realizing is you have to remember how much power the president actually has, and it makes sense. He has a lot of power, but if you understand how the system checks and balances, like it's going to come down to a variety of factors, and a president can't play to geographic forces as much as a senator can or a governor can, and that's why this is divided up like that. And I think the president needs to be someone who can manage the large system of the entire country.
But what I'm saying is that if you abolish the Electoral College, what you get is a president who's not beholden to the entire country. You get a president that's beholden to the
Running up
coasts.
the score.
Yeah, running up the
in
score
the-
in the
in their-
coastal regions.
But I mean, well, the math
in their
is
states.
that you could win 25% of the popular vote and still in the Electoral College. if you campaign in these rural areas. The thing is that
Is that true?
no, it is.
25%.
You could win 25% and still win the electoral college. It's true.
But
Look it
this
up.
is very.
I mean,
But-
it's a numbers game, but yeah.
Yeah, but the thing is that maybe
Because okay,
maybe the
got
states
it.
that are most populous deserve the most attention. Maybe there's a reason that most people live in California. Maybe there's a reason that a lot of people live in New York City. Maybe there's a reason that these people live in these urban areas. If one person, one vote is our concept, and we just deny that through the electoral college.
It's never been our
But that's
concept.
never been.
California-
Yeah, exactly.
California
That's
by
something that
itself-
someone just made up.
We've
But
never
California
been-
by itself
It's
is
not the
We've
system.
never
what
been
the-
a direct democracy.
But, like,
California by itself
This
is in the
city
top
isn't
10
even a
economies
direct
of the world.
democracy.
It's in the top 10 economies of the world. California in itself.
The
And
fifth
California-
largest economy in
But
the
if you
world.
want
at
to say it,
level.
California
California
is
has the largest population of Republicans in this entire country live in California. So if you want to talk about unfair, how about the fact that the biggest group of Republicans in the whole country lives in California, which is the most liberal state and the
They
most
have high
democratically
taxes.
dominated state.
They have high taxes. They have multicultural group, one of the largest multicultural groups in the country. I mean, they're the most diverse state, one of the most, and by Trump standards shouldn't work. By Trump standards shouldn't work.
Listen, I am
high
not in
tax, high tax and multicultural area is what he's saying. It
Can
doesn't
you
work.
say that
But
California works all the
I don't
time?
think,
though?
number one, California I don't think is a shining beacon of governmental efficiency. And also, I don't think any of us here are defending Donald Trump's worldview or his vision of America. I think we're all very uniformly opposed to that.
Yeah.
But I think that the calls to abolish electoral college or talking about that as if it's some sort of, had rigged the election, I don't think that's right. If
it does prevent third parties.
if the rules of baseball were changed so that every single counted as a run instead of a run, then other teams would win. Then the
First
Indians
off,
would win.
baseball is boring.
should have-
Second off, I think electoral college was somewhat put in place to support slave states.
True.
That's just my opinion on it, Jimmy.
The main argument that I'd like to make today is that if we want to have any kind of serious change in 2020 and we want to be able to take back a lot of the pens in these state legislatures, what we're going to have to do is do the groundwork in these races. We're going to have to fundraise like we never have before on a national level. We're going to have to go on the ground. We're going to have to listen to what people have to say, and we're going to have to take them back. Because if we don't, and we don't play the long game for the next 4 years, and it's not a long game because we have to work harder and faster than we ever have before, and pick up more seats than we have ever have before in quick succession, and we can't do it with the same kind of coalitions that we have. We can register all these minority voters. We can do everything we can to increase turnout. The fact is that 2018 is a midterm election. We are set to lose U.S. Senate seats.
yeah.
We may pick up a couple of House seats at best.
Maybe.
Probably will not
Maybe.
lose two.
Yeah.
Is what's more realistic. But we have to start doing it now, and we have to start doing that outreach because the only way that we can, because it is an older, whiter electorate in the off-year elections. And if we want to play defense and we want to start building and bring these people back into the fold and get them to vote for a Democrat in 2018 so that we don't lose them forever, so that we can get them to vote in the state, the ledge races in 2020, we have to start doing that outreach now. And that's why I think it's more important than a national in the electoral college for 2020 and trying to win the presidency. It's not about that. It's about taking back the House of Representatives. It's about taking back the U.S. Senate, and it's about forming a
Local
progressive
races. It's about local.
vision for
It's
the
about
future.
state legislatures. It's about mayor's races. It's about local races. It's got to be from the grounds up. Republicans for decades now have been making a concerted effort. I mean, to their credit, to win local races, to win state legislatures, and to win statewide attorney general roles and governorships. And
why is that
Democrats
important?
Because it comes from the bottom up. There's number one, those candidates are who end up running for national office.
So yeah, they get people with experience.
Exactly. And number two, you get your constituencies engaged and involved. And a lot of national policies are based off of state policies. So if you want to have an influence on legislature or on legislating on the national level, you need to start introducing bills on the local and state level.
What can a Secretary of State do to impact a state election?
I don't know,
Or
ask-
Secretary of the Commonwealth?
Well, ask LeVar Stoney.
And
Yeah, what did he do? No, I'm serious. This is important. Disenfranchisement versus reenfranchisement
yeah.
versus they get to decide the number of people. These
Exactly.
statewide offices get to decide the number of people. The attorney generals, who is the attorney general, gets to decide whether they challenge that, and it goes to the
Absolutely.
Supreme Court. The local elected officials, depending on whether you have more Democrats or more Republicans in the state legislatures, then they get to redraw the congressional districts after the census in 2020. So it's everything builds on each other.
And that's what it comes out to, is like every person that is disappointed with a Trump administration needs to come out, and they need to volunteer, and they need to do what
But
it needs to be done.
so that's one of the things that's been most encouraging, right? People are activated that I think never would have taken actions before. Like all kinds of people are coming out of the woodwork. Online signups for the couple different organizations that I do online volunteering work for, like, are through the roof. Like over 200 signups in a period where that would usually take a couple months.
Yeah.
Well,
And
we'll
now we
see.
just need to maintain
Well,
that.
let's
till
encourage the
elections.
121 viewers of this program to get out there, activate, organize.
www.newvirginiamajority.org.
Oh, is that an organization you have some connection to, David?
We don't know for sure.
Come out, volunteer your time,
Or get paid.
become an advocate.
I'm
I'm
very interested to see what happens. I'm not very optimistic about the Democrats' chances. I'm not very optimistic about the candidates that they've chosen, or at least Lieutenant Governor Northam, who I like a lot and who I
Love
will
Ralph.
definitely vote for, and who I think everybody should vote for. But I just don't necessarily know if I believe in his ability to win an election in an off year.
Or his ability to win Salem,
Virginia. But you know what? If you look at Ralph's electoral math, and I know that this is ridiculous because he was running against E.W. Jackson in 2013. E.W. Jackson is
Right.
certifiably crazy person.
Yeah.
But he, for instance, the day after the election in 2013, I was in Rappahannock County.
Mm-hmm.
Rappahannock County, northern central Virginia. Ralph won most of the precincts in that county. He won precincts and he won districts where Democrats haven't been competitive in a really long time. Now, maybe it's his southern accent, maybe it's his opponent, but I think there's something to him where he's going to play in areas that we didn't expect. Maybe more like first or second time that Mark Warner ran, like more of a playing in like Bath County and like Rockbridge and like down in Tazewell and stuff. We're gonna see him do much better and run much closer in a lot of localities that we've given up on.
I would be very happy to eat my words on this. I would be really, really happy to be wrong. I really would be.
There's also going to be more like union money and special interest money than we've ever.
Yeah,
ever
this is
seen
going to
in
be
a
the
governor's race
most money
before.
in a state election of any election ever.
Yeah,
by a lot.
most expensive
By a
governor's
lot.
race.
Maybe in the history of the country.
Yeah, because also,
Um,
and another reason why it's important is the state legislature, just what's it called? They just sustained the most vetoes in Virginia history because Terry vetoed all these things. Like the second that we lose the governor's mansion in this state, we're instantly North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
Like they are ready to put a Pat McCrory in charge and to start pushing religious liberties on us.
Yeah, I mean, even Bob McDonnell, was like, had this huge headache of like, how do I deal with all these like far right wing bills that I don't want to have to sign? And
He could be like, I'm a Catholic.
yeah. Yeah. Well, it's very, it's scary, and I think people got to get involved. And Virginia obviously did go blue this time, kind of against the trend of other states that are demographically similar. I think one of the reasons that is because the demographics in the state have changed so rapidly. We have Northern Virginia and the Hampton Roads area and Virginia Beach area have gotten so much more diverse than they were like 10 years ago, and that trend seems to be increasing. So there is some hope, and there's some hope that the demographics will bear out. It's just about activating those voters and getting them out.
It's very
Unfortunately, the state party I don't think has put in the long-term work to do that, and they're
It's
going to
okay
have to
because
make
other
up a lot of
organizations
grounds.
are.
Like the organization that
Like
David
what?
Mamet
Like what
worked for.
organization?
I don't know, like this organization, New Virginia Majority, who ran
Never heard of it.
the largest voter registration program in Virginia history last year. They actually restored the rights of over 10,000 returning citizens as well. So it's
That
about
sounds like a terrific
re-enfranchising and
organization.
empowering people that haven't even thought about it before. People who are moving here for the first time. As long as we have organizations like that, I think we're going to be okay.
Okay, I'm going to end this over there. Just a reminder for all the African American and Hispanic voters: make sure you breed like crazy so you can.
Breed.
Is that
was
not the right
Saying
word?
that. I don't co-sign on that.
Yeah, remove
Make
me
sure
from
you
this
have-
episode.
Okay, sorry. Not breed. Have as many children as possible
So that way the white people can't fuck this country
Well,
with the rest of you.
technically, I mean, they should have children with white people, so there are no more white people.
Boom!
I
No
know,
more white people.
I'm totally in favor of. There's a book, and goddamn, I was trying to end this episode, but there was a wonderful book called Ghost. I forgot who. I think it was Piers Anthony, and there was like a system in the country where it was mandatory interbreeding, so you couldn't marry someone of your own race. I'm not saying that should be what happens, but that'd be pretty cool.
I'm just saying, mutts are healthier.
No,
We
no,
should
they are.
all.
Yeah,
We should all.
That's true. Purebred bulldog. I mean, that's where you get incest from. I mean, have you watched Game of Thrones?
Have you-
Mixed race babies are the cutest.
This
okay?
is just like going
They're
all
also
over
the cutest.
map.
Mixed race babies are the cutest. Let's be honest, half Asian women are the most attractive women in the world. Olivia Munn, the most attractive woman in the world.
Oh, that's getting edited.
The
out.
most attractive. Sorry.
Well, I'm really glad I'm getting out of politics.
I
after
am.
this.
Yeah.
I am
Yes,
very
that.
sorry to my purebred Korean girlfriend for saying that, but Olivia Munn is the most attractive woman in the world. Okay, these are certain facts we can't argue about. Okay, Michelle Obama is not an ape, and half Asian women are the most attractive women in the world. Okay, make sure. And you know what? You have European Asians. You can have Mexican Asians.
Stop!
This train is
Asians-
going way off
Yeah.
the rails.
Asians are like the paprika of genetic breeding. Okay, they
Please.
just, everything goes well, and you put everything. You mix put a little Asian and a Mexican. You make a Mex-Asian. You put a little
Please
Asian
stop.
and a white person. You have a Asian.
Please,
You know, you put
please.
a little, you put a little Asian and a Russian. You got a Rasian.
Oh
It's
man,
great.
this is bad. You need to
Fantastic.
stop.
Oh man,
So
what,
bad.
would,
Just saying.
what would Alan say if he were here?
Make sure you have lots of.
But you know what's way more important than any of
You're
that?
editing this out. I know.
You need to make sure that you register to vote. You need to make sure that you are informed upon
guys,
every
the camera
vote that's going to
again.
happen. Here in Virginia, we have votes every single year. Next year, all of the main statewide offices besides U.S. Senators. So that's our governor, our lieutenant governor, our attorney general, and the entire House of Delegates. The House of Delegates is so important. It's your local legislature.
Unlike
Please
Bryce
go
Reeves.
vote for them. Bryce
And
Reeves.
also, you know,
hate him.
I never mentioned it, but Blasians. I'll tell you.
Oh,
I
God.
saw one
Oh,
time.
dear
I
God.
saw a girl.
Well,
It was the most
restarted.
beautiful girl. She was a 5-year-old, and she had like it was like a fro, but she had Asian eyes. It was a Blasian woman. It was the most beautiful thing I ever saw, and I just gotta say,
Does anyone have a cigarette?
black and Asian. You gotta tell you that. Tell you, there's a club in DC called Park. Okay, it's called Park. It's where black and Asians mix together, and I tell you, that is a wonderful mix. Thanks for watching. Let's get drunk and talk about it. Have a good night.
Oh boy, ended that on a high note, huh?
God, I'm